Hi guys, welcome to anatomy lesson 4.01, functions of the integumentary system. And what we're going to do in this video is it's the first video in the series for integument, which is our skin. And we're going to take an overview of everything that our skin does for us. So how many things can you think of? Take a second, see what you can brainstorm. Well, the one that people usually think of and is the most apparent is protection. But the big question here is protection from what? Because there's lots of things we need protected from. So what are some of the things that your skin protects you from? Probably everything you just thought of can fall into one of three categories: physical, biological, or chemical. Physical, biological, or chemical. So physical could be anything from scratches, damage to our organs, to things like dehydration. Our skin, our integument provides a physical barrier between us and the environment that holds our water in. Biological, that's going to be virus and bacteria. It's one of the first lines of defense against invaders. And even in some of the layers of skin, we have immune cells that roam around and they look for virus and bacteria. Well, what would chemical protection be? Ultraviolet light is not great for us, and that is actually, in a sense, a chemical type of damage when it occurs. So our skin, we're going to learn, has built-in defenses for helping to protect us from UV damage. Number two is it helps us to regulate our temperature. Our skin helps us to regulate our temperature. We are warm-blooded and we're supposed to keep a body temperature of 98.6. Actually, as we're evolving, that's dropping. It's down to, I believe, 97.7 or 97.8 as an average. But so we have two possibilities. If we get warm, so if we get too hot, our skin has a response. And if we get, I'm going to bump this up a little bit, too cold. So let me grab my whiteout. I'll let you guys catch up your notes. So what happens, what does your skin do? What happens in the skin if you get too hot? Well, the obvious is you sweat. How does sweat help? How does it cool us off? As the sweat evaporates, that pulls a lot of energy. It requires a lot of energy to evaporate water, and the process pulls that energy from your skin, and that creates an endothermic reaction. So it's actually the evaporation of sweat that cools you. If you've ever been sweaty in an environment that was humid, so that evaporation couldn't happen because there's too much water in the air, now you actually feel worse because you're hot and you're wet, and it's worse than not sweating at all. Also, you turn red. Your cheeks get red, right? Well, that's actually a cooling mechanism. So what's going on there is your vessels dilate. So this is vessel dilation. Vessel dilation, well, how does that help? Your blood's 98.6 degrees. If you send more blood to the surface, it's going to allow that heat to radiate off. So this allows a heat to radiate away. Okay, what about, I'm off screen, shoot. I set this up pretty quick, so I'll rewrite that up here. Heat to radiate away. And my cutoff point is about there. All right. So if you're cold, the opposite's going to happen. Your vessels are going to constrict. Your vessels constrict. That's going to keep the blood towards away from the surface, and it's going to preserve your heat. So this keeps blood away from the surface. And remember, your blood is heat, so blood / heat away from your surface. The other thing that happens is you get goosebumps. You get goosebumps. Well, here's the thing about goosebumps. You have a little tiny muscle, and it's actually right down there, and that's called the erector pili. I'll write it on this screen. We'll talk about it more later. Erector pili. I think there's 2 L's. There might only be one. And what that does was when it contracts is it takes the hair usually sets like this. And when that contracts, actually, well, yeah, it stands the hair up on end. Now, goosebumps, so it's the contraction of the erector pili muscle. Contraction of erector pili muscle stands the hair up. How does that help keep us warm? Well, it actually doesn't help us all that much. Unless you're one of those, if you've ever seen there's like Greeks, they're known to be really hairy. So if you see a Greek guy walking down the street in Europe, if that guy got goosebumps, he'd have quite a bit of hair that will be standing up on end. And that is going to trap the air close to his skin. This worked better when we were hairier, but natural selection is pushing us towards less hair and finer hair on our bodies. The other thing that goosebumps were intended to do, when you stand the hair up, not only does it help keep you warm, but sometimes you get goosebumps when you're afraid. Well, the reason for that is if you see a cat, if it sees a dog it doesn't like, all of its hair will shoot up on its back. That's the equivalent of goosebumps, and it's designed to make the animal look bigger and scarier. So this actually has kind of a twofold purpose. All right, number 3, your skin is a sense organ. We're sensing things like temperature, pressure, pain. And this guy down here, I'm going to highlight all of the special nerve cells we're going to talk about. I can see 2 right here. The 2 that I just highlighted are special nerve cells. So we have sensory receptors or sensory neurons. And these are special neurons, neurons that let us detect things. So they're nerve cells, but they're specialized. Number 4 is our integument acts as a reservoir for our blood. If somebody asked you, where's your blood at? You'd say in blood vessels, but actually 5% of it is in your integument. So again, and we talked a little bit about, we're using it to radiate away heat, we're using it to preserve heat. By the way, all of the blood is located in this middle layer. This top layer has no blood. And most of the reserves, actually these bottom 2, I lied. The bottom has quite a bit of blood too, but this top layer has no blood we're going to learn about. Number 5. I'm going to grab a different color here. Let's pick blue. No, let me do light green. Number 5 is excretion. So we get some of our waste comes out through our skin. And I know about this firsthand, unfortunately. My grandmother passed away from kidney failure. And what happened was her kidneys stopped working and she was on dialysis for a long time, but then she started to have some other functions and she ended up going on hospice. What eventually killed her was the failure of her kidneys. So what happened is after about 3 or 4 days, she started to get this white powder on her skin. It was the waste in her blood. Her blood was actually trying to push the waste out through her skin and she itched. She itched horribly and I hated that. But if your kidneys fail, your body will actually try to push all of your waste out through your skin. And she actually had this white chocolate chalky appearance all over her arms, all over her legs. So that happens to a small extent on a normal instance, but that was an abnormal instance. The last thing we have is metabolism. Metabolism. Well, what is it that we're metabolizing? Actually, we would call it vitamin D. You can't absorb, vitamin D allows us to absorb calcium. Without it, you can't absorb a drop of calcium. And without calcium, you will die. Your muscles will not work. Your heart has to have calcium. So it is extremely important. So what happens is we have compounds in the skin, compounds in the skin that react with UV light. Wait, didn't I just say UV light was bad for you? It is if you get too much. So up here, you could get a sunburn. But down here, we actually need some UV light to get, plus those compounds in our skin. And we form something called cholecalciferol. Wait, didn't I just say it was vitamin D? They're the same thing. Well, why do we call it vitamin D? Early on, scientists figured out that we needed additives into our food. So if you're at the grocery store and you have to buy a gallon of milk and one says vitamin D added and one says cholecalciferol added, which one you going to buy? You're going to buy that one. That sounds like it's good for you. That sounds like that'll kill you. So scientists just gave these compounds that we need fancy names, vitamin this, vitamin that, vitamin B, vitamin, A, because people think it's good for them. We don't want to use the scientific name if you're trying to sell something. So this is a problem because we need this. Oh, there goes my marker. And what we have a lot of in Ohio? This. Now, tanning beds, yes, they're bad for you. I'm not saying go to a tanning bed. What I do recommend, though, is that you take a vitamin D supplement because not only do you need it to absorb calcium, vitamin D deficiency has been linked to an increase in a lot of diseases that you wouldn't think it could have a factor in. So things like breast cancer, MS. One of the things that they have talked about for COVID is vitamin D appears to having a high level of vitamin D in your blood helps. So I don't take a lot of supplements, but vitamin D is one of them. And I've taken it for a lot of years. Now you do have to be careful. I got a little overzealous a couple of years ago and I was taking 10,000 units a day. You can't take too much. I got a kidney stone. So you have to make sure you take the right amount. You can Google how much to take, but highly recommend it. So what are our takeaways here? Our skin does a lot for us and probably a lot of things that you didn't think about. We've got protection, both physical, biological, chemical. It's regulating our temperature. It's helping us sense our environment. It's preserving, holding our blood stores. It does a little bit of excretion, and we've got this vitamin D metabolism. A lot of these will come back up later as we go through this packet, but that gets the ball rolling. So that's all we've got to start off with. Thanks for watching and have a good day.